year. Let's go Tar Heels. Let's go Armando. Let's get back to the tournament in 2022, or excuse me, in 2023-24.
You are Locked On Tar Heels, your daily podcast on the UNC Tar Heels, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, what's up? It's Isaac Shade. Welcome into this bonus emergency episode of Locked On Tar Heels. Earlier in the day, Puff Johnson announced that he was transferring out and thought about doing an emergency pod for that, but we would talk about it tomorrow's show. But then Armando Bacot announces he is coming back to school for a fifth year. And with that news, we have to dive into talking about it. So we're going to look at what this means for Carolina. We're going to look at why Armando might have done it. It's funny, literally just on yesterday's full episode of Locked On Tar Heels, we had done Stay or Go, Armando Bacot edition. And I'm glad we got it out yesterday because he decides already to stay. And finally, this is some good news for the Tar Heels who have had a rash of transfers out already. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about Mondo coming back, what it means, why come back. We'll touch on the Puff Johnson news, but we're going to unpack that more fully on Thursday's episode of Locked On Tar Heels. Make sure you are subscribed to the show so you see that, and also make sure to subscribe so that you can jump into the chat. Then after Puff, we'll talk about what this means for Carolina's scholarship situation for next year. If you're curious about that right now, you can look on my Twitter. In fact, literally in real time right now, I'm going to go pin that to the top of my Twitter page so you can see it. I am pinning that right now. So if you go to my Twitter and you want to see Carolina's scholarship availability for next year, you can go look on Twitter at Isaac Shade. And so make sure you do that in real time. Okay, great. But anyway, we'll unpack that more fully on tomorrow's full episode. I will give you, we'll put the actual chart up and you'll see it. Today, we're just going to talk about it. After that, we will go and take some of your questions, because that's always one of my favorite parts of these live chats, is seeing what everyone is saying. And then we will go on from there. So welcome to everyone joining in. So glad you are here. Let's get right into discussing this news. All right. So Armando Bacot is coming back if you're just tuning in. And again, literally yesterday on Locked On Tar Heels, we did a Stay or Go Armando Bacot. So for those who are unaware, after the COVID year, when everything was shut down at the end of the 2020 season, North Carolina and all of the NCAA was allowed for the players that were starting either in the 2021 season or were already in college. All of them could have one more year of eligibility to because of what happened in the 2020-21 season, not the year where the tournament was shut down, but the next year where things just weren't normal. And the NCAA decided, and I think rightfully so, to give players one more opportunity to come back. That first year and even that second year, those COVID scholarships did not count against the quota. You get 13 total scholarship in men's college basketball, and any of those COVID guys did not count against that. However, starting this year, they did. So now, like, for example, Leaky Black's scholarship this year counted against North Carolina's 13 scholarships. That will be the same for Armando next year. So he will be one of those 13. If you're wondering how much longer does this go on, that's a great question. The upcoming senior class, so RJ Davis and Caleb Love, is the last class that has an extra year of COVID eligibility. So we will see it this offseason, and we will see it one more time next year. Okay, so for Armando, the big question is, why come back to school versus why leave? I want to share with you several things that I said on yesterday's show, and then some of you are probably dropping in the chat your thoughts on this as well, and I'm interested to read those here in a little bit. Why come back? Well, there's several things. Number one, people are probably aware that Armando Bacot's skill set doesn't translate well to the modern NBA game. That modern NBA wants fives, big guys like Armando Bacot, true centers, who not only can do what Armando can do inside, but who can also step out and knock down threes or deep twos. But deep twos even aren't valued because that's the least efficient shot in basketball. So because that's not what Armando can do, you saw a lot of guys like him, like Drew Timme, like Oscar Tshiebwe, like Hunter Dickinson at Michigan, all come back to school this year, right? You saw that all over the nation. That's part of why Armando's going to come back. He is not high on draft boards, or he's not on them at all. And so he could do some things in workouts and maybe move his way towards being drafted late in the second round, but that probably wouldn't be the case. So one reason for Armando to come back is that he's not going to get drafted. Number two, NIL. In this era of NIL, it makes a ton of sense for somebody that is as marketable as Armando Bacot has proven himself to be to stay in school. Why? Because if you go out and you don't get drafted, then you go to the G League or you go play overseas. In the G League, you are not going to make very much money. Overseas, you can make a really good living for yourself. But this man is making a lot of money at North Carolina. And so it makes a ton of sense for him to come back from a financial standpoint. Along with that, a third reason to come back is the exposure angle of it. Think about this. If you leave North Carolina and aren't playing for an NBA roster, you're either going to be in the G League where you're playing in front of a couple hundred, maybe a couple thousand people. You might be overseas where you might be playing in front of a lot of people, but it isn't in America in front of national television audiences. Versus if you stay at North Carolina, depending on how many games the Tar Heels play next year, somewhere between 30 to 40, Armando Bacot will be on national television for 30 to 40 games next season in front of 20,000 people when they play at the Smith Center, or packed houses when they go on the road because everyone wants to play North Carolina. That is the exposure that he will get. So that's a third reason. A fourth reason, while he's wouldn't have probably gotten drafted this year, this is another shot coming back for a fifth year at what do I need to work on to make myself NBA-able, if I can use that phrase. And so what is it that he can do this offseason to continue progressing towards having a shot at being drafted in the 2024 draft? Now, to that point, it is interesting to me that Mondo decided not, it's the same thing he did last offseason. He did not go through the NBA draft process to learn what is it I need to do to get ready. And I think a lot of that is because he knows exactly what it is. But that's the route, for example, that Justin Jackson took, right? Left to go test out the NBA draft waters, came back and set the Carolina record for three-pointers made in a single season, became the ACC Player of the Year, and helped Carolina win a national championship in 2017. That worked out pretty well. So it's a fourth reason is it's another shot at moving towards getting drafted. I'll say two other things and then we'll move on. Another reason to come back is the rafters. This man loves North Carolina and would love to see his jersey in the rafters. It's back-to-back years now that he's just come right this close to being the ACC Player of the Year, which that gets you up there. Or, all the things for even getting to the front row, being the National Player of the Year, being the MOP of a national championship winning team, being a unanimous first team All-American, those kind of things. Armando has every bit of capability of doing that. And when I say rafters, it's not just that. It's cementing his legacy, which frankly, he has already done, right? He is just a legend at North Carolina. He's the leading all-time rebounder. He's the leading all-time double-double getter, all these kind of things. But he could just set himself even further apart. And I know some people out there will scream, fifth year, put an asterisk on it. I get that. I hear you. And I hear that argument. But it is what it is. The NCAA has granted these years, so players are going to take advantage of it. That's just the truth, and that's what Armando's doing. I think another part of that, too, is that if I'm Armando, I'm super frustrated with how injuries derailed this season for him in a lot of ways and how they derailed the end of last season. If Armando hasn't had those lower body injuries this year, that's at least 3 more games North Carolina wins. And at that point, you're dancing, right? They might even still be in the tournament right now. But it's just like there's got to be that pit in his stomach that says we didn't get everywhere we could. And part of that is because of the injuries I endured. And there's nothing you can do about that. But it also makes you like, I'm going to come back and do that. And then I think the last thing I would say is championships. this dude wants to come back and win a national championship. I'm sure we're going to see quotes and hear stories and things like that directly from Armando, and I'm excited to read those about why exactly he decided to come back. But that's part of it. Because again, the final note on this is Armando loves this place. Do you remember when he committed to North Carolina, he became the biggest cheerleader for the Tar Heels, recruiting everyone in sight to come and play alongside him? Remember that? Yeah, that is still this guy. He loves this place, and it's like, dude, why not come back for one more time? Because for those of you who have already graduated college and moved on, no, there is no time like it in your life. And if you love it, why not do it one more go round? And if you can make a lot of money and be in front of a lot of people on TV and play high level basketball in the meantime, I say go for it, right? You with me on that? I think you probably are. Now, a couple more things before I start taking your questions. And thanks to everyone who's joining in with us. Thanks for all the questions you've got going on. Earlier in the day, it became public that Carolina was going to have a fourth player transfer out. Remember, you have 13 total scholarship players, and this is now the fourth. Justin McCoy and excuse me, and Dontrez Styles, and who am I missing that did it the same day? Tyler Nickel. Gosh, sorry, Tyler. And so we already had those three guys. Tyler Nickel was the most shocking of those to me. Wasn't surprised about McCoy. Was even less surprised about Dontrez. But the Puff Johnson transfer news earlier today, that was shocking to me. And so we're going to talk about that more fully on tomorrow's show. So make sure you stay tuned for that. Don't want to spend time on that right now because we're here to celebrate Armando Bacot coming back. Now, the final thing before we move on to questions is to look at what this means from a scholarship standpoint. So as I just said, there are 13 total scholarships that a men's basketball team can give out. At the point at when the season ended, before we knew anyone who was leaving or coming or staying or anything like that, Carolina had 12 scholarships committed for next year. You obviously knew that you're losing Pete Nance and Leaky Black because they were out of eligibility. So that takes you down from 13 to 11. And then with Armando essentially leaving because he was a senior, that takes you down to 10. But then you get the freshmen coming in and Simeon, Wilcher, and Zayden High. So that brings you back up to 12. So if everyone does like the typical normal thing and Armando doesn't come back, then you have 12 scholarships already committed with one available for transfer portal or one other high school player. And so then we had those 4 transfers out that I just named. And so that means now you're up to 5 available scholarships earlier today. But then with Armando saying he's staying, Carolina now has 4 available scholarships. Again, I'll put the chart up on tomorrow's full episode of Locked on Tar Heels, or if you want to see it right now, it's pinned to the top of my Twitter page and you can go see it there. So got to make a big splash in the transfer portal. You need shooting on the wing. You need shooting anywhere you can get it, quite frankly. If I was with Puff transferring out, if I was to make a call right now about the starting 5, I think you got obviously Mondo at the 5, Jalen Washington at the 4. I think whoever starts at the 3 is going to be a transfer in. And then, man, I would say RJ starting. And then if Caleb comes back, he's starting. If not, I would probably right now, say Simeon Wilcher. But obviously we'll have to see on all of that. All right, going to take your questions in just a second. But first, this episode is brought to you, this bonus episode, this emergency episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The tournament is heating up and it's painful to talk about it without the heels in it. Hats off in order to forget what's going on. And now's the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because new customers get a no sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. So don't miss the chance to get your no sweat first bet up to $1,000 when you go to FanDuel.com/locked on. Once again, that's FanDuel.com/locked on to learn all about it. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, folks. Before we get out of here, we've been going about 15 minutes. Want to roll through and see what kind of questions you have, and we'll answer those in real time. I'm going to put them on the screen as we go. Joseph's recap says, this. RJ Davis will be next, announcing he will be returning for his senior year. Boy, hope that is true. We will obviously wait to see on that. Bruce Wayne says Hubert needs to reach out to stretch fours, and there's going to be a lot of those. We'll wait to see, but that's going to be definitely part. There needs to be some front court help for these guys. Seven God says, first time I caught alive. Welcome, Seven God. Glad you're here. Joseph, I want Nick Timberlake to transfer to UNC. Nick Timberlake is one of the names we have heard that Carolina has reached out to. You've heard me talk about him if you've been tuned in with us on Locked on Tar Heels. He's a Towson transfer and seems like a good candidate, is a good shooter, but we'll wait in and see on that. And in fact, Jackson Heath says, Isaac, what's our chances with Timberlake? It's too early to really know on that. Part of the thing is we know that this week, both Carolina and Ohio State are conducting in-home visits with Timberlake. And so just even the fact that Carolina has been granted that opportunity, says to me that chances are very high. I think the big question is, does Carolina really want him? Anytime a guy would be transferring up a weight class, if you'll allow me to call it that, you have to wait and see. Do you think that's transferable to the ACC level? It's hard to know at this point. So the staff is in evaluation mode to figure that out. And so we'll wait and see. Seven God says, what's this I'm hearing about Ian? And he's referring to Ian Jackson. I guess I shouldn't assume that Seven God is a guy. Seven God could very much be a girl, goddess. What's this I'm hearing about Ian? There's always rumblings. Like last year, it proved to be true with Gigi, right? We all know that happened last offseason. Until there's definitive news on anything like that with recruits, I don't even really want to talk about it. And so we're just going to wait and see with that. I am with you here, Darius Little. Our guy, what's up, Darius? Good to see you. Says, finally, some good news. Flex arm emoji. You are right with that, Darius. Like, I don't know about you guys, but it's like, I know that the transfer portal, especially people going out, is just part of the deal this year, right? Or in this era of the one and done transfer era. That's what I'm looking for. The transfer portal, one-time transfer era. And so still though, 4 guys leaving already is tough. And so great to get this particular news. And Darius, you're so kind as well to say like and share. I see Seven God has said in the stream, I'm a guy. What up, Seven God? Glad to know it. And John Kramer saying we need a wing score, right? We've already talked about that. That just need shooting everywhere you can get it. Let's go. Colin, thank you so much for your kind words. Colin Wells says, have really started to appreciate your content and daily pods. Great job, great quality. Also love that you work at Ozark. Colin, how do you know about Ozark Christian College? That was awesome. That is my other employer where I am a professor. So let's keep looking through this here. Oh, I haven't seen this because I've been on doing the podcast, but I love this. Jonathan Fox, what's up, Jonathan? Our brother who tunes in for everything says Mondo already tweeting out who wants to come and play with him. Did he really tweet that in real time already? I'm looking as we're talking. I get buckets. Yes, he says, who trying to come play with me? DM me. What a baller. Armando Bacot. This dude is legit. This is why you love young men like him. For everything about people leaving and the bad that people talk about with transfer portal and NIL, there are wins all over the place just like this. And I love it and I'm here for it. So there you go. Seven God says it well here. This is what I talked about earlier. He loves Carolina. He's getting paid. And what's better than college life? I mean, that's a great summary of it. Davion Harden, I love this. And this is something we're actually going to talk about on the full show in the coming days, either at the end of this week, tomorrow or Friday, or early on Monday. Says, we are at a crossroads, but Mondo will help us will help recruit us guys. And this word crossroads is something, if you watch the show regularly, Coach Pat Kilby, who's on every Wednesday show, he's on today's show. In fact, go make sure you watch it. Have been talking about just in our texting back and forth, is this is kind of a crossroads moment for the Tar Heels. It's going into the third year of the Hubert Davis era, trying to still solidify what it's going to be, what the Tar Heels are going to be under Coach Davis. And so I think that Mondo coming back just helps show like everything ain't broken. Let's not freak out, right? Why would Mondo come back if things were broken? So love to see that. Let's get this question. Micah says, do you think DeMarco Dunn will enter the transfer portal? Lots of question marks and exclamation points. Hear me say no. I do not think DeMarco Dunn will enter the transfer portal. Now, things could change, but I thought DeMarco would enter it last year and he didn't. And then he got legitimate playing time this year, and I think is only going to grow in that. And so, Micah, as of right now, I would say 80% DeMarco Dunn will be a Tar Heel next year. Let's keep looking through a few more things. A lot of people sad about Puff, even in the midst of the good news. And that's true. That is legit. And here's the truth. This is coming from Michael Jones. Need at least one guy that can shoot from outside to stop the double and triple teaming on Mondo. And let's just call it what it is. Yes, Michael, you are spot on, because that's not going to be Mondo's game. Mondo's going to continue to be an offensive rebounding monster. He's going to continue to average a double-double and clean up inside and everywhere. But in order for things to not happen like they did this year, the guards have to shoot better, like RJ did when his finger wasn't jacked up. Whoever is playing at the 3 and 4 has to be able to fill it up. And so if Jalen Washington is starting alongside Armando in the front court, he's got to be able to step out and hit it in a consistent way. From everything we've heard from Coach Davis, he can. Unfortunately, didn't do that this year, but keep in mind, he is just coming off of his injuries. And so there is a real thing there. Let's keep looking here. Micah also says, who else do you think will stay or leave? We're going to be doing more like the show yesterday where we did Armando Bacot, stay or go. We're going to be doing more shows like that. Unfortunately, not tomorrow, because we're going to be talking about Armando and Puff Johnson. But then on Friday, we're going to do RJ Davis, stay or go. Next week, we're going to do Caleb Love, stay or go. More things like that. Okay, so stay tuned with us. Obviously, if there's more information like this in real time, we will get it out. But the big two dominoes we're watching for now are Caleb and RJ, right? Those are the big question marks for us. All right, let's keep looking. I love this name, Luvy's Fat Life. Bacot needs a good sub to keep him fresh and healthy. I 100% agree with this. Somebody like DJ Burns from NC State, right? Can you imagine if he was Armando's backup? That would be phenomenal. Carolina just doesn't have that. Like, look at UConn's front court is a great example of this. Adama Sanogo is just obliterating people right now in the NCAA tournament. If you've been watching, you know it. There's a true freshman backing him up, Donovan Clingan. That is an absolute stud and does the same kind of things that Sanogo, or in our context, Armando Bacot does. And Carolina just hasn't had that the last couple of years. If Hubert Davis could lure in a legit similar big to Armando, right? Think about it. Last year, Brady was it. He's not the same game as Mondo. Same this year with Pete. That's just, it is what it is. All right, let's keep looking. Here's a good question. This is something we've talked about a bit lately from Michael Shadrin. Thanks, Michael, for your question. Do you think anyone from 24 will reclass with all the open spots? That is a very real possibility, particularly if any of the guards leave. But think about it. Let's say, for example, that Caleb left. You still got 3 on the roster in RJ Davis, DeMarco Dunn, and Seth Trimble, plus Simeon Wilcher coming in. So even if Elliot Cadeau, for example, reclassed and came in 23, you'd then have 5 legit guards in the backcourt. And so I just don't know. Maybe Ian Jackson, who could play a 2 or a 3. That's something to watch out for. I'm not ruling it out, but I'm not saying it's definitely going to happen either. It's a good problem to have, though. We'll have to wait and see. Here's a good question from Jonathan Fox. With Puff leaving, is there any chance that Tyler Nickel has a change of heart? Very possibly, right? Just because a player enters the transfer portal doesn't mean they have to be gone. And this is why players should not be burning bridges on their way out. Like, I thought the way Puff handled his comments today were great, talking about how much North Carolina has meant to him, always being a Tar Heel. That's how you need to do it. If you have left and you burn a bridge, there's no hope of that. But so I doubt Tyler's going to come back, but it is a possibility and it is a thing that could happen. People will often say that, hey, I'm entering the transfer portal and I'm going to open my options, but I could come back. And so that could be a thing. All right. Man, so much stuff to come back, but we're pushing on that 30-minute mark and I want to get out of here pretty soon. But let me see if there's just any big things left that we need to hit. Yeah, a lot of people asking about RJ and Caleb and them coming back. Kerwin Walton didn't play at Texas Tech much this year. And so there's all of that. Joseph asked about Bobby Pettiford from Kansas, a guard who has entered the transfer portal. He's an interesting one to look at for sure. I'm curious to see if Carolina contacts him and reaches out. And so, man, people are really divided on Caleb coming back or not. Really interesting stuff there. Man, interesting. Okay. Yes, I want to say this and then we're going to get out. GH says, do you think Mondo announced because we have heard so much bad news? He knew we needed a pick me up. I think there's something to that. And here's what I want to compare it to. Do you remember back in December, the day, it was a Wednesday, I very specifically remember it, when all this news was breaking about the football team and transfers and people leaving. It was like right when Storm Duck and Tony Grimes left and a certain offensive coordinator went to Wisconsin. Literally that same day, Drake May said, I am staying in Chapel Hill. You remember that? Remember that? I think that was a very purposeful and intentional thing. And so do I think Mondo announced because we needed some good news? I'm not saying it's a 0% chance. I think there's a very real possibility, GH, that you are on to something there. So very good stuff. Anything else we need to hit? International. Yeah. Davion asked about why can't we get into the recruiting game in the international market? I'd love to see that. This is curious from the Creator Classroom, who we often see. What's up, Creator Classroom? In the live with Mondo's little brother, I saw Armando at Carolina and thought another announcement is coming today and a little bit later, 5 for 5. We will wait to see that. I love that. Hashtag 5 for 5. Did Mondo start saying that? I love it. We're going to talk. We're going to use that. Hashtag 5 for 5. So we'll watch. There might be more news coming today. When it comes, it seems to come in quick succession. So we will wait to see on that. So everybody, thank you so much for tuning in. Always great to be together, especially when there is good news, right? It's like a breath of fresh air. We can breathe, let your hair down a little bit, all that good stuff. Y'all, my hair is so long and wild, but we'll get to it. So anyway, another full show of Locked On Tar Heels coming at you tomorrow. Make sure you check out our new show, Locked On College Basketball, where I'm the co-host along with Andy Patton, who's also the host of Locked On Zags. We have great stuff 7 days a week right now because of the tournament. Make sure you check us out on there. That's it for today's little emergency episode. Thanks to everyone who has tuned in with us. Great news for the Tar Heels. If and when there's more, we will do the same thing. All right, everybody. Until tomorrow, or maybe later today if there's more good news. Peace.